Welcome to April's meeting. I hope you enjoyed our little slideshow that got us kicked off this morning. If you were at our meeting last month, then you know that we had an awesome conversation about, among other things, what we'd run and save in a fire. It was really fun to get all of your pictures and to hear both in the course of our meeting and online what those things were. So thank you to all that participated and shared what was meaningful to you. And thank you in advance for the journey we're going to go on today. We're so thrilled that you're here. I know for a fact, calling in from near and far, and we're going to really go through it. We're gonna start high. We're gonna go low. We're gonna bring you back high again. We're gonna do all of that John O'Leary magic that he does so well, and we're gonna get started right now. So here is the first question I want you to think about. And as a reminder, as is true with every meeting that you're in, this is already the end of the workday for some, the near end for others, maybe the beginning. For a few people on this call, the more you put into this conversation, the more you'll get out of it. So we invite you to chat liberally, to share your thoughts, and we look forward to doing the same with you. So live inspired together community. Hi, John. John said hi to everybody in the chat. I'm going to ask this question of you. Since we last met, or if you weren't with us on the call last time, since March 5th or 6th, whatever that day was, can you tell me one meaningful thing that has happened in your life? Put it in the chat, just one thing. Okay, attended my mom's 100th birthday party. That's amazing. Gave thank you gifts to several people. Saw John speak. Thank you, Mike. Joined a new church. Bill, we're going to want to hear from you later on an update on Susan. So keep that on your to-do list. I'll come back. My daughter, successful surgery. Brad, I love it. Family vacation in Costa Rica. Son finalizing his arrangement for a wedding. Awesome. Grandkids and kids spending spring break with us. Swam with dolphins in Key Largo. That sounds amazing. Raylene, Saturday, watching my son run in a college track meet and having a great race. In his word, the race of his life. If you're a parent on this call and your kid comes off lit up by something like that, it feels like you have also run the race of your life. I swear. That's my kids are 13 and 10, so I have a ways to go on this journey still, but I can tell you that for certain. Kim Seal, hello in Dallas, received 2 unsolicited and appreciated affirming compliments from 2 cohorts at work. Validation feels amazing. Affirmation is uplifting, especially if it's your love language. Jeff took his 14-year-old son to a baseball trip to Memphis, celebrating my oldest son's first anniversary, started a new consulting engagement. High fives all around to all those things. All my charities, iPhone 3 says, I have been able to help. Oh, Antoinette Irons, hello. Thank you for coming today. Michelle replies, as a fellow track mom, I totally understand. My son's running the Boston Marathon in 2 weeks. Michelle, that's amazing. The St. Louis Marathon took place here yesterday. And I swear, if you have never stood at the finish line of a marathon, you see every single manner of humanity cross that line. It's incredible. And I am not a runner, but I leave uplifted every single time. I'm going to admit a couple more. Welcome, Sandy, to the call if you're popping on, and anyone else who popped on while I was talking last. So thank you for everyone who shared in the chat. Keep them coming. I thought I would, do as I say, not just as I do, and share with you something meaningful that has happened to me since we met last. So one meaningful thing that happened to me since the time we last met is that I attended the celebration of life for this girl right here, Molly Zergel. She was my right-hand woman for almost 10 years in the job I had prior to working with John, and literally lit up every single room she walked in. Molly was a one of a kind, and she, horrifically and suddenly, and of course, tragically, was killed in an automobile accident the last week of February. And it's been such a whirlwind. I know everyone who has dealt with unexpected loss has been in my shoes before. And the reason I'm starting off on this note, and I promise it will be high, like I said it was, is because right after we met the last time, we attended her celebration of life. And I was one of 500 people who were there. And there were some tears for sure, but they were far outweighed by laughter and jokes and memories. And it had stuck with me every day since I attended, and it really truly was a meaningful part of my month, and will continue to be so for as long as I remember it. To give you a little insight on Molly and her personality and her impact, I will share with you the lead of her obituary. I did not write it. I am a writer at heart, though, and so when I see prose that makes my heart sing, I feel like I have to share it. And this encapsulates Molly so well, which is: beloved daughter, sister, cousin, aunt, legendary karaoke performer, underrated dancer, liqueur connoisseur, Elvis aficionado, and everyone's funniest friend. It concludes by saying there's never been and never will be anyone like Molly. And although her life was tragically cut short, she made the most of every single day. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today, which is living a life that is the most it can be every day that we're walking together on this planet. So get ready. I'm bringing the man, the myth, the legend on before he takes us on this journey to help us understand the value of living a life like Molly did and so many others. I'm not going to let him off the hook. And I'm going to ask you, John, to share what meaningful thing has happened to you since we met last.
I accept the challenge, Meredith, and I'll answer that as soon as I say hello to my friends on the call. I almost say it every time, but I think anytime you're part of someone's friendship circle, you want to be reminded that you're loved. And I look around the screen and I look around the names, and whether I met you last week in a speech and your highlight from the last month was meeting O'Leary, and I hope your next highlight is a lot better than that one. But if that was one of the highlights, good. It's great to have you part of this family, and for other friends that would have been doing this work with us for years. Some of you worked side by side with me, and I'm just grateful for all of you. So thank you for spending that time with me. My highlight, I have a picture of it, Meredith, so I'm coming prepared for this one today. I'm going to share my screen with the leaders on the call, and I want to make sure you get ready to go on a wild roller coaster, because here we come. Mine was not working. It was actually stepping away from work. Over the spring break holiday, I had a ton of work. And so I'm running from flight to flight. Thank you, Kim Seal and Southwest Airlines, for getting me safely and on time from position to position. But eventually on Friday evening, I landed back in St. Louis after ruining the kids' spring break. They weren't with me at all. And then their mean mom makes them go to the airport to pick their dad up. What they did not know is that she had quietly packed their bags and was actually driving to the airport, not to pick me up, but to drop them off. And so I met them at the drop-off area, hugged them, got them out of the car, loaded them onto our favorite airline, and then flew up to New York. And so the highlight for me, the positive, is this: flying with that motley crew from the Midwest up to the East Coast, showing them what this city is like, taking a tour of Long Island and the Statue of Liberty and the September 11th Memorial, all these beautiful structures. But the highlight wasn't just the time. Specifically, when I asked the boys what was their highlight, surprisingly to me at least, it was going up to Midtown late one evening. It was walking into what they consider kind of vague theater. You just kind of walk in, and then they were blown away by this performance. And so, my friends, before I tell you what performance they saw, I have a question for you. So we're going to cut into that playbill right there. And in the chat feature, whether your name is Heather Aurora and you're just tuning in, or Sandy Schwab and you're tuning in, or Bill Alexander and everybody else, I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Broadway show? What's your favorite musical or play? So we're going to just have a little bit of fun before we go on the wild ride together. Favorite musical, favorite play, favorite performance that you've seen on New York or Dallas or St. Louis, Raylene, or anywhere else that you may have seen it. And I'm just going to read a couple of these because I want to buckle up with you and go for the ride. So Jeff, we may be coming back to you in a moment. Hamilton, hands down. Lisa, Wicked. Amy, Hamilton. Brad, Wicked. We're going back and forth. Now West Side Story is showing up. Thank you, Meredith. Sheila, Hamilton for sure, but Wicked was pretty wicked awesome. From Switzerland, baby. Phantom of the Opera. That thing plays anywhere in the world. Michelle, the Jersey Boys. I bet it is up there. Avita, man, don't cry for me. Chuck Jansen. Dave, Waitress. Awesome. That's rare, man. Waitress or Hamilton. Daly, what's up, man? I'm glad you're out of school for the day. Tuesdays with Maury. Powerful. Wicked. Fiddler on the Roof. Lion King, and onward from there. Awesome. Awesome. Music sometimes allows you to feel things that you don't yet have words for. Part of the joy of the Fiddler on the Roof, or Cats, or Les Mis, which I love, or Hamilton, which I'll be speaking about briefly here. Up in New York, I expected to see Hamilton. It wasn't, though, in New York that surprised me. It was actually back in St. Louis 8 days later. So my Saturday last week was wild. I'm going to briefly get you into the roller coaster ride of life with me, and then we'll talk about what it means for you. It began early in the morning celebrating this guy. Most of you on the call know him well. That fella in the tuxedos, our brother, Matt Miller. Coach Matt was there with his wife and 3 kids. And they were there to celebrate the life and then ultimately burying his sister-in-law. Her name is Mary. Mary had some challenges in her life. And 11 years ago, that girl you see in that beautiful blue dress, her name is Kate. 11 years ago, she moved in with Matt. Matt was not her dad. Annie, Matt's wife, is not her mom. But pretty quickly into the relationship, she started referring to them as mom and dad. And there's a lot more to that story that I'm not free to talk about today. Needless to say, Kate has been through a lot, but who better to go through that with than Matt Miller? So he loves her like a daughter, and now she loves him like a dad. It's a beautiful celebration of that family, of what looks like when we serve the one in front of us, no strings attached. So I hugged Matt and his family, and then I left because my wife and I had to run to the next funeral. And this funeral broke our heart for a million different reasons. This one was up at church, our church, the one where Beth and I attend with our kids. Some of you on the call may even know this gentleman because he's known around our community, but his name is Rick Bischoff. Rick is a friend. He is a rock up in our community. And I learned while I was in New York with my boys that Rick had passed away. And as utterly broken and sad and tragic as that is, to learn that this man who had a wife named Amy who adores him, 3 beautiful, awesome kids, a guy who's doing everything up at church. He's the kind of guy, to put this all into context, when a tree falls in your backyard and everyone else hashtags prayers, thoughts and prayers, O'Leary family, he's the kind of guy who shows up with a chainsaw. That's Rick, man. That's the kind of guy he is. So to learn that he had passed away crushed me. But to learn that it was suicide, there aren't words. How do you explain away that one? No, nobody, not his wife, nobody saw this coming. So we're mourning this loss of a man who so vibrantly lived well. And it doesn't make any sense. And the funeral is agonizing. And what do you say? And how do you even raise your voice and sing? And then the pastor has an opportunity midway through to celebrate this man's life. And he began by saying the words, "The unimaginable has happened." And there's a song that keeps running through my mind. It's been running through my mind all week long. And then he started singing it. And rather than me singing it or Pastor Kevin singing it for you, I thought I would just play it. It comes from Hamilton. And for the Hamilton fans in the room, you may recognize some of it. For those who don't know Hamilton as well, this is after Hamilton has made a mighty mistake upon mighty mistake in his life. And it's a song about loss and grief. And I want you to hear it from their perspective today. This is what our pastor sang.
There are moments that the words don't reach. There is suffering too terrible to name. You hold your child as tight as you can and push away the unimaginable. The moments when you're in so deep It feels easier to just swim down. The Hamiltons move uptown and learn to live with the unimaginable.
We could let it play if we wanted, if we were actually listening to the song on Broadway or at the Fox Theater here in St. Louis. But then the pastor stopped singing and he stopped looking around at the ushers back there on the left or the O'Learys back there on the right or everybody else in this big church. And he looked at the people in the front row and he called them by name. And he said to them, what happened 8 days ago is simply unimaginable. And there's no way getting around the brokenness that we feel. You can't mask it by drinking or laughing your way through it. This grief won't fade. And so today I'm going to try to give you 3 things so that at least you can understand how to move your way through this chaos that you feel. And then he gave to the folks in the front row 3 children, 1 widow, and the parents of this boy 3 things to grasp onto in the midst of a mighty storm. The very first thing that Pastor Kevin said was this: you got to be honest. You got to be honest. You can't hide from it. You can't drink your way through it. You can't laugh your way through it. You can't work your way through it. You can't get addicted to something through it. This thing is going to be with you for the rest of your life. And then he talked about what happened, and it was painful hearing it, but it was also honest to share it. And then he sang, and this is what he sang again.
Look at where we are. Look at where we started. I know I don't deserve you, Eliza, but hear me out, that would be enough. If I could spare his life, if I could trade his life for mine, he'd be standing here right now, and you would smile, and that would be enough.
But he can't. And we can't. We can't. But he said the first thing is to name it. To name it. It gives you the power at least to then imagine taking the next right step forward on the journey of grief. So we named it as a church community. And then he said, I want to give you the second thing to hold on to during this time of grief. And it's this. And he's again talking to the front row, not to me, not to you, Live Inspired Together community. He's reminding the folks in the front row to be patient with themselves, with their family, with this grief, with this storm, with one another. Be patient. And then he sang another verse from Hamilton.
I don't pretend to know the challenges we're facing. I know there's no replacing what we've lost, and you need time. But I'm not afraid. I know who I married. Just let me stay here by your side. That would be enough.
So be honest, he said, be patient. And then he gave us the third. And ultimately, my friends, this is the one that's going to take us up to the bottom of the hour. In the midst of the mightiest storm we could fathom in our lives, the loss of your husband, the loss of your daddy, the loss of your son. And then he finally looked up at us, the loss of your friend, the loss of this Rock Up at Church. Seek evidence of grace and goodness in the midst of the storm. He's like, if you're looking for it, you'll find it. Seek evidence of goodness and grace in the midst of the storm. And then he took us through one more verse. I'll play this with you, and then we'll talk about evidence of goodness and grace in the midst of the storm. So here we go.
Moments that the words don't reach. There's a grace too powerful to name. We push away what we can never understand. We push away the unimaginable. They are standing in the garden. Alexander by Eliza's side. She takes his hand. It's quiet uptown.
Forgiveness. Can you imagine? Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
And Chuck Jansen on the call is my buddy who knows more about forgiveness than certainly I do, and many of us do. But forgiveness, can you imagine? And he kept echoing that line back, forgiveness. Can you imagine? Forgiveness. Can you imagine? And then he reminded all of us of this process of being honest with our anger, with our sadness, with our brokenness, with our questions. How did this happen? Be honest. Don't hide from it. And then secondly, to be patient with one another. Be patient with your sadness. Be patient in this time of grief. And in the midst of it, and this one's really important for all of us, to seek evidence of grace and goodness in a marketplace of plenty of darkness and brokenness and divisiveness. To seek the evidence, because if you seek it, you'll find it. And then he asked this question. Hope. Can you imagine? Peace. Can you imagine? Living again. Can you imagine? Loving again. Can you imagine? So my friends, as we seek evidence of goodness and grace and hopefulness and love and vibrancy and life in our lives, we want to hear from you now. Where do you see it most clearly? Who is someone in your family, someone you work with, someone you raised, someone who raised you, a neighbor, someone you worship with, someone you work out with, someone who just personifies the ability to seek goodness and grace? They just exhibit this, they exude this. My loving wife, beautiful. My uncle, my godfather, Mickey. My mother-in-law, Lisa. Rana, my mom, because she is full of cheer, and thanks to God every day for her. Chuck Jansen, I see it. I can't read it aloud, but I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Dave, my stepmom. Gosh, how about this one? My stepmom. Jesus, says Christine. My friend Josh Wilson spends his days serving the most challenged communities. Lutetia from Robin. I didn't choose her. She chose me. Isn't that beautiful? She loved me and accepted me, and she pulled me out of depression. There's a story there. Thank you, Robin, for sharing it. Kim, my big sis. My husband, my sons, my Lord and my Savior from PR, my grandfather, my fraternity brother, Dave King, my good friend, Dave, another Dave, special needs child, this one from Vilmer, my son, Daly, my mother, Lita from Chris, my friend, Kristen, our pastor, Tony D. What's up, Tony D? Jesus, and my wife displays it as well as anyone that I'm around physically, and onward from there. So I'm going to give you my answer, and then one final question for the day. Okay, so Meredith mentioned on the front side, this should not come as a surprise. It's going to be a ride. Welcome to life. There are ups and downs. There are peaks, but the peaks are made more beautiful actually through the valleys. There is light, but what allows us to rejoice in it is when we experience those periods of darkness. So this short 30-minute session is a reminder of all those facts within our own lives. So where did I see evidence of goodness and grace in my life? You know many of the stories, and you know this one a little bit, many of you, but I want to show you a picture because once I left Matt Miller's sister's funeral, and then I went to my buddy Rick Bischoff's funeral. Beth and I have had to leave right afterwards and go to the third funeral last Saturday. And this one for a man who was 96 years of age, and he lived each of those years well. He was awesome. We celebrated his life. His name was Carlos Papalardo. He was the surgeon who poured himself into that little boy you saw a moment ago when I struggled mightily physically and was unable to hold anything from a cup of coffee to a cell phone to anything else. This was the physician who stepped alongside of me, put his arm around me, and saw hands that were busted up and broken as being as beautiful as an Italian sunset. As beautiful as an Italian sunset is what he always said when he saw my broken, charred, useless hands. They're not broken or charred or useless on Johnny. They are as beautiful as an Italian sunset. It wasn't just the words he spoke or the surgeries he did. It was the way he lived and the way he loved. Today, we're talking about your legacy, but not the one that others will say about you once you're gone. What we're trying to get to is what are people saying about you now that you're here? How do you walk into a room? How do you show up at work? How do you make a difference with your customers, with the people you impact in your life? What are they saying about you now, by the manner in which you live and speak and serve? That's how we live out our legacy. That's how we live out our legacy. So before we have a final question for our Live Inspired Together community here, I thought you might want to hear the words of a man who was a bastion of joy and life and vibrancy for me. His name is Carlos Papalardo. We spoke right before he passed away. And you'll see him on this little iPhone that he had. He was amazed that it even worked. We had about a 35-minute conversation, and I'm only going to play the last 35 seconds for you. One, so you can hear his voice. He was from Argentina. He loved traveling to Italy. He was a chef. He was an astronomer. He loved animals. He loved children. He loved life. He loved life. And you'll hear that vibrancy even near the end of his life. Listen for it.
Good, very good. Listen, I'm very, very, very proud that you did this, you know. I'm very thankful. You can't imagine. You make my day today. I was having a rough day today because, you know, you can't do anything now. Right now, I will go and jump around the garden there.
Well,
exercise.
Get your exercise in. I need you healthy because I want to give you a hug, shake your hand, and thank you for being my doctor and my friend.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
My love to you and your mother and your wife and your father.
Thank you, my friend. Love you. God bless.
Thank
and
you very
talk to you
much
soon,
again.
Carlos.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Okay.
I did not get to talk to Carlos soon, but I got to hug his family, and I got to hug his grandson, Louis, who looks just like his granddaddy, Carlos. And I got to hear all these other stories from other surgeons and other patients in the room celebrating this man's life, not his death. Please understand that clearly. They weren't celebrating his death. They weren't mourning this guy's passing. They were celebrating a life well lived. So live inspired. It's not accidental. We called our entire business that. Live Inspired Together community. We do have a final question for you. Get ready to type it into chat. Woo! For those of you who follow us on the podcast, you're familiar with question number 7. But now, rather than waiting for Brene Brown or some artist or astronomer to answer it, you leaders, Bill Alexander, Jeff Vilmer, Kim Seal, Meredith Sainer, Bogus, Lisa and Amy and Lisa and Park and everybody else, you get to answer it. All great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read? You will be remembered one day for how you showed up, for how you served, how you lived, how you smiled, the jokes you told, the way you forgave. How do you want yours to read? So into the chat feature. And then Meredith will steal back from me. I see her grabbing the microphone already, but she'll steal back from me momentarily the microphone. All great people, and I'm on the call today with 32 of them, can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How will yours read?
John, they're coming in already. I have from Robin, she was an overcomer. Raylene, she was a good and faithful servant. We know that to be true. Rona, she learned to savor the moments and embrace others with love. Chris, she loved to have fun while spreading love and kindness. Lisa, she showed up with optimism, kindness, and perseverance even when life was difficult. John Daly, always an educator, a coach, an encourager, and a difference maker. Dave, he treated everyone with importance. Park, he made people's lives better for knowing him. Sheila, she lived a life full of adventure and love. Kim, he preached Jesus Christ, and at times he even used words to do so. Actions speak louder, right? Chuck authentically journeyed through life to serve others. Mickey, he quietly took care of all of us. Sharon, she loved well. PR, despite the challenges, I was blessed and bestowed love from others beyond my wildest dreams. Dave, he loved life and served others. Sounds familiar. Know some other folks doing that around here. Deanna Martinez, she loved and will be missed. Chris, life is a daily tug of war between accepting mediocrity and being the best version of ourselves. Be the best you. Jeff, in one way or another, he made those around him better. And Bill, the options were unlimited to do for others. I have to just say, like, I'm sure everyone has had a Monday. They all come at you that way. This has been a busy Monday around Live Inspired. All awesome work, all wonderful service, but to get to end it this way has been such a gift. So thank you for sharing those words, and I hope that, you know, when we hang up this call in a few minutes, you'll walk away thinking about what you typed in that box and whether or not it's what's following you around in your days when you are interacting with others and when you have a chance to do more. Because I know I'll be thinking about your words, you know, long after this call is done.
I'm just moved. I'm to be honest, I'm a little wiped out. It's been one of those days already and weeks already, and there's some struggles going on broadly and interpersonally. And then you hop onto a call like this, which is the core of our work. It's not the big stages. That's not why I do what I do. It's friendship and it's values, and it's coming back together and saying what's broken, what's right, and how do we redeem it, not only in our lives, but for those around us. And to have this community of 12 and then 20 and then 24 and then 28 and then 32 on this call today at the high water mark, it just keeps going and growing. And you guys have touched my heart through being here, but actively being here. So I just want to thank you for that. I want to also let you know where we're going next, because you're probably like, dude, that was a wild ride today. Please tell me the next one's going to be a little bit more playful and chilled out. It will be. We're going to be talking about living with no regrets. No regrets, no regrets. To make sure that our ladder is leaning up against the right wall and that we're climbing directionally with the right folks. So I'm excited already to celebrate your life and your legacy with you on May 1st. Get ready for that one. You may want to pin it down. You may want to bring a friend into the call on that one. It's going to be emotional and practical. And normally we wrap up with either Meredith getting the last word or maybe O'Leary dropping the mic. But I would love if one of you would type in a question, because I want whatever's on your mind. If you're like, dude, what do you think about this or that or another thing? If there's anything that you wish we could spend just 30 seconds on as we wrap up, any questions on your mind or heart as you try to be honest and patient and seek evidence of grace and goodness, but you're struggling. So if you have any questions for Team Live Inspired or something you want to bring up to the rest of us, I would love to hear from you right now. What would the single thing that we could do to make the greatest impact on a stranger? I think you know the answer to that, because most of us are strangers in almost every room we walk into. And so then if you ask yourself, so what makes an impact on me? And usually it's not, well, they did drop off $1,000, Amex card. Like, no, that's nice, but that's rare. I think it's always sharing the little things. It's the door being held. It's someone on the way into the office. I'm coming in hot from another meeting. It's someone waving me on when it's not even my turn, saying, come on, your turn, with a smile on their face. And so I think the most important thing we can do for another person, in particular a stranger, is to make sure that they feel seen and heard and valued and loved in a marketplace where seldom do those things take place, even in their own families, even in their own bedrooms, even in their own boardrooms. So when you walk into a McDonald's, when you walk into a Starbucks, when you walk into a workout room or a worship center, and you go up to someone you don't know and you're like, listen, I've never met you before. My name's John or Chuck or Sharon, and I just want you to know I'm grateful you're here. That might save a life. That sounds like, well, he's being kind of dramatic. Am I? Was at 3 funerals last Saturday. I don't think I'm being dramatic at all. Your love and your grace and the way you show up can maybe change the life of somebody else. It certainly will change yours. So family, friends, Brad Leiser, and everybody else, I want to thank you for being on our Live Inspired Together community chat. I want to remind you that next May 1st, Meredith, what time?
Noon Central. Back to the lunch hour.
Bring your brown bag, bring something to sip on, non-alcoholic preferably, and get ready to rock and roll as we talk about making sure that we live with no regrets. So family and friends and leaders, for this time and until next time, my name remains John O'Leary. Be patient, be honest, seek evidence of love and grace, and know that the best is yet to come. Can you imagine?